Excuse me, she can't even read the menu. The voice stabbed through polished laughter and the gentle chime of silverware. In the epicenter of opulence, white linen tables fanned beneath golden sconces, every well-heeled head turned. The words had come from Malcolm Worth, billionaire investor and master of every room he entered. Tonight, he lounged like a general among his lieutenants in Hôtel Marcel, arguably the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan, where French was less a language and more a password. Across the table, his companions tittered, riding the wave of his scorn. Waiters lined walls with military precision, their eyes laser-focused, hoping never to catch his. The maître d' shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene. But in the crosshairs stood Simone Duval, a black waitress calmly cradling a tray of escargots, her poise unbroken. Simone had learned early that people like Worth believed the room revolved by their design. Women like her, dark-skinned and aproned, meant to orbit quietly in the background. For 2 years, she'd worked this gilded floor, moving like water through currents of expectation and entitlement. Her ordinary world was a stage where she was both invisible and essential. A single mistake could cost her the job she supported her mother and younger brother with, yet her excellence was treated as basic obligation. But tonight, the world felt doubly sharp. Simone's shift had begun with the usual barrage of orders, tiny humiliations and pointed stares. Her throat pulsed with nerves, but she calmed herself with silent conjugations and the memory of her grandmother's stories, beginning in Paris and ending in a Brooklyn walk-up with cigarette smoke and wisdom. Malcolm Worth lounged in his seat, swirling Bordeaux, peering at Simone as if she were a curiosity. "It's all French, darling. Perhaps the kitchen can send you a translation," he mocked, waving the handwritten menu for his friends to see. A slow wave of laughter swept his table, a sneer dressed as a joke. It was just another dinner, another test of boundaries. But Simone's dark eyes met his directly. She blinked, unyielding, and gently set the tray on the table's edge, careful not to let her hands shake. What none of them knew, what Worth and his world-worn cronies could never guess, was that Simone had once dreamed in this very language. She'd whispered Balzac by moonlight, transcribed Proust between shifts, tutored her brother in accent and idiom and myth. Her French was crafted in private, honed in adversity, a secret she'd guarded as armor. Now, with the world watching, Simone's heart hammered between anger and caution. The central problem loomed. To speak up risked everything, the security of her family, the weight of every staff member who'd endured 1,000 quiet humiliations. But to say nothing would mean accepting their story of her, silent, inferior, invisible. A tingle of anticipation raced through the room. The billionaire's taunt hung heavy over crystal glasses and blanched faces, and yet Simone felt something shift inside her, a coiled strength waiting and ancient. She smiled, just enough to be polite, not enough to challenge. The maître d' hesitated, his fingers twitching at the edge of protocol. The other servers forgot to breathe. Somewhere, someone muttered, "Don't do it." But at that moment, something in Simone's spirit refused to be denied. Outside, thunder rumbled, and rain traced urgent hieroglyphs upon the window. From a world of privilege, a single voice had tried to define her. Yet what no one saw coming was the reply that would echo far beyond this glittering dining room. For tonight, the rules of silence and power were about to break, and the next moment, the one that would change everything, was only a heartbeat away. The pause after Malcolm Worth's barb felt endless. Simone surveyed the room. Her co-workers held their breath. The maître d' tiptoed on the edge of intervention, and a wave of stealthy pity flickered behind strangers' crystal wine glasses. She knew this script. A powerful man's amusement at her expense. A room complicit in her silence. Every muscle in her shoulders braced, her ancestors whispering for dignity. But then a spark. Simone's voice unfurled with the precision of a violin bow, low but unmistakably clear. Monsieur, souhaitez-vous que je vous lise le menu avec l'accent de votre enfance? The French rippled, a flawless cascade of consonants and vowels, so rich and Parisian it bent the air. Malcolm's laughter stumbled, his glass pausing mid-air. Shock washed across his companions' faces. English, German, and French partners alike exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even the sommelier blinked in stunned admiration, his bon Dieu barely audible. Simone continued, the menu in her hand becoming a stage for all her overlooked brilliance. She described each dish, not just its name, but its history, its subtlety, the origins of the sauce bordelaise, the myth behind the coq au vin, the precise terroir of the Grand Cru on their table. Her cadence painted Parisian markets, tiny bistros, the joy of breaking bread not with arrogance, but with gratitude. Malcolm, accustomed to control, tried to regain his footing. Is that so? Well, can you recommend a pairing for the truffes, since you clearly have opinions? His tone was strained, fraught with an edge that betrayed embarrassment more than command. Simone did not flinch. In French, she explained the earthy pull of a mature pomerol, switching back to English to make it inclusive. She did not pander, she translated culture, showing a generosity that put Worth's mockery to shame. A low murmur swept through the room. First surprise, then applause from a table nearby, a rising tide of admiration impossible to ignore. The billionaire's mask slipped just enough to reveal a flicker of rueful respect and, deeper down, something resembling shame. Yet not all were delighted. One of Worth's advisors, bristling at the disruption to the social order, whispered, "She must be showing off, nothing more than a trick." Several guests tried to draw Simone into political chat, hoping to trip her, but instead of shrinking, Simone widened the conversation. She wove references from French literature, sprinkled humor with recipes, and, when someone doubted her, quoted Hugo's words about courage and dignity on stormy nights just like this. Simone's emotion simmered under her composure. Years of fighting to be seen, every graveyard shift and late-night textbook session culminating in this moment. She could feel her mother's pride from the other side of the city, her brother's face lighting up at the prospect of maybe a world that listened. But this sudden limelight also brought risk. Would she be punished for breaking the script? Would Worth exact revenge for being bested? And yet, right now, the room belonged to her. For a fleeting instant, social gravity reversed. The world gazed at Simone not as a server, but as an equal. Outside, thunder retreated, replaced by rain's applause. Simone's act of courage had cracked the armor of power and rewritten the night's trajectory. But far greater battles, envy, backlash, new alliances, were already gathering in the hush that followed. What no one saw. This spark was only the beginning. The real test, where dignity and consequence met, was coming, and no storm could drown it out. Tonight, a single act of fluency had shifted the air. Tomorrow, it might just shift the ground itself. The applause faded into a storm of side glances and whispered calculations. But beneath the initial hush, a deeper conflict took root in the marble and gold sanctuary of Hôtel Marcel. Simone returned to her station, cheeks burning not from shame but from the adrenaline of standing exposed in the spotlight. Guests eyed her with a blend of newfound curiosity and old inherited suspicion. Malcolm Worth, stung by more than a public correction, stiffened in his seat. He tried to recover his dominance with wry humor, raising his glass as if nothing happened. "Well, perhaps we should let her handle the negotiations with our Paris office next," he tossed out, laughter lined with an edge sharper than crystal. His companions snickered, reluctant, uneasy. But Simone felt the invisible weight of scrutiny press harder now than before. The maître d', face tight with concern, pulled her aside between courses. "That was remarkable, Simone, but be careful. Mr. Worth isn't a man used to being outdone." His words were a warning draped in a compliment, a reminder of the thin ice beneath victories won in the wrong arena. Back in the kitchen, other staff members clustered around Simone, torn between awe and fear. "You made him look human," whispered Raphael, the pastry chef. "That means he might want to prove otherwise." Maria, the hostess, squeezed Simone's hand. "Don't let them make you small again." But the tension didn't stay confined behind kitchen doors. Word traveled through texts and quick calls, the staff's secret network, turning Simone's moment into legend before the night was over. Outside the velvet curtain, the power table reeled. One of Worth's partners, eager to restore the old pecking order, began peppering Simone with rapid-fire questions about obscure dishes and rare wines in French. But she held her ground, answering with casual fluency and subtle wit, refusing to be cornered. With every elegant phrase, she won silent allies across the dining room, guests now rooting, if only inwardly, for the woman who'd bent the light. But the real test came when Worth, unable to let the night slip from his grasp, announced that he expected their meal's rarest dessert, one not on the menu, requiring special ingredients inspired by classic Parisian tradition. He faced Simone and demanded, in French at full volume, its origin, preparation, and significance. Simone did not hesitate. She told the story, her grandmother's recipe, fragments of exile and return, the taste of hope in a foreign land. Her voice trembled only at the edges. The guests hung on each word. But beneath her surface calm, Simone weathered a flurry of angry glares from Worth, cold disapproval from the head sommelier, and ripples of envy from a co-worker quietly nursing their own ambitions. The first attempt to break her failed, but with each moment the backlash built, simmering in the hearts of those unused to such boldness from the invisible ranks. When the final course was served, Worth called for the restaurant's owner. In front of all, he questioned Simone's appropriateness and implied she had shown disrespect to valued guests. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. If the world couldn't humble her with laughter, it might do so through power. Simone met his gaze, steady, tired, and unbeaten. "Respect," she replied softly, "runs deeper than language. It cannot be commanded with a shout." The room paused, breath held between tradition and transformation. But as midnight drew near, the storm outside returned, windows rattling, wind howling, mirroring the turmoil within. Simone sensed that though she stood taller than ever, the ground beneath her had never been more precarious. Tonight, she forced the world to listen. Tomorrow, she would face the true price of being heard. The rules were unraveling, and everyone, especially Malcolm Worth, could feel their world tilting. What no one foresaw, the next act would challenge not just custom, but conscience itself. By dawn, the storm had become a memory, its fury replaced by eerie stillness both outside Hôtel Marcel and within Simone's chest. The saga of last night's confrontation traveled ahead of her. Whispers curled through shining corridors, pausing over every linen-clad table and tracing the sweat-slicked palms of servers on the morning shift. For some, Simone had become a legend, for others, a cautionary tale. But for Simone herself, fear and uncertainty gnawed. The owner, pale and polite, summoned her before service, voice smooth, lips pressed thin with worry. "You understand, Simone, we pride ourselves on discretion. Mr. Worth is an important man. Perhaps next time, less theater." The words were careful, but underneath, warning, disappointment, the threat of punishment. "We'll call if your services are needed tonight," he concluded, already reaching for another resume. Simone walked away, all steel drained from her posture, dignity battered though her head remained high. In the kitchen, some co-workers shunned her, afraid to share the target. Others, bolder now, whispered encouragement as she passed, sliding her pastries and coffee from trembling hands. Raphael pressed a note into her palm. Courage changes the menu for everyone. The kindness almost broke her. But the backlash was swift outside work as well. She fielded a cold message from her landlord about noise complaints. Her younger brother's voice quivered when he asked if she was in trouble. The city, too, seemed changed. Harsh neon, wet sidewalks, eyes averted. At home, Simone considered packing her aprons and her dreams, wondering if dignity ever truly compensated for doors slammed in retaliation. Yet even as fatigue curled around her, something indefinable kept her from surrender. Her breakthrough came in the quietest hour, comforted by her brother's sleeping breaths. Simone replayed every word, every risk, every lost comfort. What appeared as her undoing began to look different. She'd spoken up, not for applause or challenge, but for the invisible ones, the staff who flinched at cruelty, the women who held back brilliance, the children who twisted their tongues into whispers out of fear. Her realization: she had survived humiliation, envy, and the billionaire's power. She'd told the truth, shown the fullness of her story, and was still standing. The world had not ended. In the margin of risk, a stubborn pride, older than her doubt, ignited. By afternoon, a surprise arrived, a letter hand-delivered with an embossed seal. Inside, a note penned in elegant French. Last night, you taught us all something about grace. The Paris partners insisted you join their event tonight. Your skills and your courage. Honor us. It was signed by both the restaurant owner and the visiting executives. Simone's hands shook as she read it. Vindication, not only for herself, but for everyone who'd once been told what they could not do. She called her mother, not for advice, but for the reassurance of roots. "You are seen, Simone," her mother whispered, voice fragile with pride and fear. "Go and show the world again." Simone stood taller. She pressed her uniform, rehearsed her French, chose earrings that had once belonged to her grandmother. She would return to the restaurant not just to serve, but to reclaim the space her silence had never protected. For tonight the stakes were higher, not just one arrogant billionaire's approval, but the hope and dignity of 100 invisible people waiting to see what courage could bring. And as rain began again to tap at the panes, a different kind of storm formed, one fueled by resilience, ready to rewrite every rule. Simone understood. Bravery doesn't erase fear. It teaches you to move forward while carrying it, head high. The next chapter, her second act, would not just change her fate, but the lives of everyone forced to shrink for someone else's comfort. The evening air at Hôtel Marcel shivered with anticipation. Word of Simone's invitation to the Paris Partners event had electrified the staff and unsettled the old guard. Even the guests sensed a shift. The way the maître d' offered her a nod instead of a warning, the way a handful of regulars watched her with a new, almost reverent curiosity. Tonight the dining room was transformed. Tables gleamed, conversation hummed, and the invisible boundaries that once hemmed in possibility began to blur. Simone's heart beat in time with the silverware as she approached the venue reserved for the Paris delegation. Business titans, language scholars, cultural attachés, and at the edge, Malcolm Worth and his entourage, now less swaggering, more watchful. The owner hovered close to Simone, offering a soft, almost apologetic bonne chance. She straightened her blazer, steadied her breath, and crossed the threshold from mere waitress to ambassador of survival. The Paris partners welcomed her with practiced warmth and subtle awe. Their first toasts were raised to variety and courage, sending gentle shockwaves through the crowd. One by one, they asked her to share the menu, explain the hidden meanings behind the rarest dishes. even to recite a few lines of French poetry. Simone obliged, her accent silky as a river at dusk, her presence radiant. As she spoke of regional flavors and family traditions, faces opened, some for the first time, smiling not just in courtesy but in genuine connection. But Malcolm Worth was not yet vanquished. He watched from his table, irritation coiling tighter with every word of praise that was not for himself. When the moment came, he struck, grandly requesting Simone approach, and in front of all, demanding she interpret a contract from one of the Parisian partners, filled with technical, archaic French. The trap was clear. Public failure would restore balance, or so he hoped. Simone took the document, nerves buzzing, scanning the dense text. The room spun for an instant, with ghosts of past humiliations. Then, a memory, her grandmother parsing just such documents for distant relatives, teaching Simone not just the words, but the courage to own them. She began, her voice, calm and measured, unraveled the legalese into precise, elegant English, pausing to clarify idioms even the lawyers struggled with. The Parisian executive beamed, confirming her translation point by point. Laughter broke out, not the brittle, mocking kind, but a ripple of delighted approval. Worth's challenge had backfired spectacularly. The very thing meant to diminish her instead crowned her, the evening's quiet star. The owner, spectators, even rival staff joined in a rising tide of applause. A respected partner stood and, in flawless French, thanked Simone. "You have honored not just our contract, but the soul of our language." Malcolm Worth, outmaneuvered and witnessing his authority bend, offered a stiff, "well done" through gritted teeth, and, for the briefest second, bowed his head in concession. The celebration rolled on. Simone found herself surrounded by supporters and admirers, her story already the inspiration for toasts and after-dinner conversations. The waitstaff greeted her with embraces and laughter. The kitchen's hierarchy seemed to finally dissolve as Raphael shouted, "She's our champion!" across the swinging doors. For Simone, the victory was bittersweet. Vindication hard-won, respect no longer borrowed but earned, solidarity born of defiance. She looked out at the dining room, seeing not just power and privilege, but a new world unfolding. One table, one brave word, one act of refusal at a time. And as midnight bells chimed, Simone realized the price of being visible could be fear, yes, could be risk and isolation. But tonight, the reward was something greater, a future transformed for herself and all who watched courage break the spell of silence. The world would never be the same. Not after the night the language of dignity spoke louder than wealth. Tomorrow the world outside would wake to rumors of a black waitress who silenced a billionaire in flawless French. But inside Hôtel Marcel, where every rule had been rewritten, Simone knew the real change had only just begun. Morning painted Hôtel Marcel with soft gold, transforming its palatial hush into something almost tender. The staff filtered in, carrying yesterday's stories like lanterns. Simone stood behind the marble bar, hands folded, eyes sweeping a dining room now charged with invisible grace. She was exhausted, soul deep, but a gentle pride buoyed her as she watched co-workers moving with new confidence, not under the billionaire's gaze, but under each other's. The day after her victory, everything felt possible. Where staff had once scurried in Worth's shadow, they now met him eye to eye, no longer flinching at every order. Raphael prepped pastries, humming a French lullaby. Maria practiced her accent with the hostess staff, and even the sommelier, once cold, offered Simone a respectful nod. Small changes became tectonic. A new protocol made front of house speak their native languages to international guests. Handwritten menus bore translations signed by Simone, and the once invisible staff now rotated, leading pre-shift meetings. Simone herself found her world bending outward, chefs asking for her opinion, regulars requesting her table, a journalist from Le Monde emailing for an interview. But more precious than fame was the message she received from her younger brother. A selfie in his school cradling a French textbook, grin wide, the caption in careful script, "Anything is possible." Malcolm Worth, for his part, returned to Hôtel Marcel, a little subdued perhaps, but with a new edge of humility. He greeted Simone with a courteous bonjour, the hint of respect genuine if begrudging. At his next gathering he recounted the tale not as humiliation, but as a lesson. The world is full of fluency you refuse to see until it stands right in front of you. His entourage caught the shift. Mockery was replaced by curiosity, skepticism by possibility. The maître d', previously cautious, offered Simone a formal invitation to propose new training programs, empowering the entire restaurant staff to develop skills once thought wasted on the help. Hidden talents emerged: a dishwasher with a gift for Italian opera, a busboy adept at Japanese, a pastry chef who could quote Cicero. Hôtel Marcel's reputation soared, known now not just for its menu, but for the chorus of voices behind each service. For Simone, the greatest lesson lived in the quiet between shifts. She realized her power had never rested in language alone, but in the refusal to accept the world's false translations of her worth. Dignity was not given, it was spoken, lived, insisted upon with each act of boldness and kindness. Her mother, arriving for Sunday brunch, wept quietly as she watched Simone command the floor. "Grandma would be proud," she murmured, and Simone, smiling through her own tears, whispered back, "We are all more than they see until we show them." The rain outside cleared, the city itself seeming lighter with the new day. As sunlight cascaded across pressed linen and polished glass, Simone took a slow breath, grateful, hopeful, unafraid. She had changed her fate, yes, but even more, she had redrawn the boundaries of who could be heard and who could shape the story. Because in a world eager to translate you into silence, true fluency is the courage to speak, until even the unlikeliest rooms must learn your language. And long after the plates were cleared and the last toast raised, her voice lingered, the melody of dignity, impossible to unhear, echoing through Hôtel Marcel and far beyond its golden walls.